Hey guys! Okay, I am in a new location, so I just want to make sure all the things are working okay. The lighting might not be great in here, but we'll give it a go. We'll give it a go. I'm in my office. That's Ashley's office behind me. That's a picture of summer. Summersby. Lots of ribbons around. A lot of great pictures, but most of them are on my wall, so I can see all the kids. We're home, as you can tell from all my sweaters. It got cold all of a sudden. It was totally beautiful. And then today the wind kicked in, and I'm talking like wind is like, whew. Hey Kelly, she's in the foaling barn. Good luck with all the babies. It got cold, got windy. But the last couple days have been just beautiful, and we were really lucky, and it's very green, and the horses have been happy in turnout. Everybody made the trip great. We had the chiropractor come on Sunday, so that was perfect because we all drove the horses home on Friday. It was like an easy 11 and a half, so like an easy day drive, so that was good. And everyone arrived, everybody got turnout. We have to sedate a few because that is the safest route. And yeah, we got an inch of snow in Michigan, Jennifer. Yeah, so did Kentucky. Like, I gotta tune in. I've been really busy all day, but I gotta tune in to Rolex and see how did they possibly do the jog with snow. I don't know if that's ever happened. That was like crazy. And I want to wish Allison Springer the best of luck. She's got business Ben there this weekend, so that'd be great. What else happened? Yeah, so the chiropractor came. He just got everybody just sorted right back out. You know, it was a big trip. Freddie likes to jump off the ramp. It's a lot. You know, we send a lot of them in box stalls. So in one way, they have a little bit more freedom. They can put their head down. They have a bucket of water in case we get stuck in traffic and the trip becomes very long. I don't worry about them in a box stall, but it's also, for some horses, a lot more bracing. So it felt great to get the chiropractor here right away and get everybody squared away, and everyone's felt wonderful. Yeah, I have to say it was a good trip. And yeah, what else is going on? We're showing this weekend. Khaki, she's going to be on her way very soon. Can't wait. Yeah, I'm going to show 2 horses. Jess is going to show 2 horses. It'll be a great weekend. So we're going to head over to Tryon. So that'll be really fun. And yeah, I got my first COVID shot. That was exciting. Got my, a little arm sore, but feeling really good. Rode like 10 horses or something the next day. So everyone felt good, and there was not a lot of pulling, so that was good. I'm still just feel so great about being on the Apple Podcast. It's so exciting. And yeah, there's always more information in there about if you want to join the Academy. It's a pretty fun group. Lots of great videos. We've got all kinds of different horses, all kinds of different subjects, different exercises. A new video comes out every week. It's just been the calling of my life. I had no idea. I think about sitting here at home 2021 and what freaking 2020 looked like. I was freaking out, wondering what's going to happen. How am I going to do this? I can't teach clinics. That's a big part of who I am and what I do. And then we just decided to bring my riding, my teaching, Charles's teaching. We would bring it right to you, to your living room. Or sometimes people watch it before bed, and then I get this weird message from their husband that, like, they meet me for the first time and they're like, I know your voice. I'm like, I am sorry you hear this in bed at night because that's when, you know, his wife is watching the videos. But it's truly been a calling for me. And a year and a half ago, even like a year, we kind of I came up with the idea like now, last year. And it's just been wonderful what it's turned into. And we're just so proud of it. We're so pleased. You guys all love it. I get at least like a message every couple days on Facebook about what the Academy means to people, what the teaching means to them, how it's helped their horse, how they found their joy back in their riding, how they didn't think their horse was fancy enough, but through the exercises in the Academy, they have found a whole new way for the horse to go. It's just been just truly an honor of my life to be able to share with you guys. I hope you guys find that fun, that you get a new video every week of a different exercise on a different horse, from rescue ponies to Grand Prix horses, because we do it all. We do it all here. So yeah, tonight I'm going to talk about what to look for in a horse. I was laughing with Marie Stewart because she won again. We were talking about it all day today. We were like, what should I talk about tonight? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to a show. I've already talked about that. We had a big trip. I've already talked about that. So like, what should I talk about? So I'm going to take notes from all of your great ideas that you guys wrote in. I appreciate that. I got a couple text messages. I will definitely, you know who you are. I will definitely get to those topics as well, because there's always so much to talk about. But tonight I thought it would be fun to talk about, you know, what I look for. That was Marie's idea, and a lot of people second that. And I mean, I just partnered on a horse with Helgstrand, which is pretty fun and pretty amazing. And I still like pinch myself because I can't believe it. I love him so much. And yes, he is red, of course, red with a lot of white, even a little belly spot, which I love. His name is Ivar. I love him. Are there hearts in my eyeballs? Because I feel like when I talk about my horses, that happens. But yeah, like, what about him made me say, wow. I mean, we went there looking for a client, and I sat on him and I trotted probably two steps. And I was like, well, I don't know. This is going to be the right horse for my client because he's kind of young at 8. But I love him. Like, I love him. Just wow, right away. It was love at first trot. And then canter. And yeah, we'll go into that. What about a horse like that speaks to me, and what I look for as a general basis of, you know, and I actually should do another talk about like what makes a good horse, although it's all kind of the same ideas. Because ever since I trained Summersby, my Sir Donnerhall mare, to the Grand Prix, she had so many amazing qualities, and I love her. And now we're working on breeding her, so keep your fingers crossed. We need as much help as possible. She's up at our friend's house, High Point Hanoverian, with Klaus and Larissa. Hey. And like, she was such a good horse, and it was like, she wasn't the horse you would pick out of a warm-up and say, wow, that horse is amazing. But to ride her, every one of you would love her. And like, what were those qualities? And so I've always thought, like, I should write an article about what makes a good horse, you know? And it's like so many things you don't ever really talk about, you know? It's, of course, it should not have like a horrible club foot or a terrible long saggy back and a like totally terrible neck and crooked legs and all kinds of things. You know, I mean, that's pretty obvious. But what are those internal attributes that really make a fine horse? Something that's fun to train. It's going to withstand the work. You know, you're going to have success in whatever success is for you. That doesn't mean you have to be going, you know, I want to go to the Olympics on this horse. You know, maybe it's like, I just want to have a good time. Like, I want to be able to trail ride it once a week and not like pray for my life. You know, there's all kinds of different things that when you're looking for a horse, what those qualities are. And I do think it's important for you as a client and your trainer, like everyone needs to know what the criteria is. And Carol, I see your don't be hating on the club feet. It's on the back side of my notes of what you can live with. And we can live with Dewey, even with part of his tongue missing and a club foot. We will live with Dewey because he's amazing. But like in general, like let's go through a little bit of the list of things that are important. And I didn't mean to do this in a most important, least important kind of thing, but I think I did do that. So the first part for me is rideability. Hands down. Hands down. And that doesn't mean all my horses are easy to ride. I mean, I got some hot, redheaded, feisty ones. I have some very energetic young bay ones. I have a slightly feral rescue pony. We all know who I'm talking about. But it's about feeling that when you're around them, when you ride them, you have a sense that they want to be your partner. That is really, really important to me, that if I come with 50, they come the other 50. And there's a lot of pieces that go into what that looks like. I had one horse, it sounds a little bit weird, but he would never make eye contact with me. I could never look into his soul because he would just like evade me. And I was like, I cannot connect with this horse. Like, I don't feel he's looking to me at all. And so that's like a fundamental problem for me. Because if I can't like be friends with the horse and want to be in their presence and them want to be in my presence, then it's just gonna not work in the long run. Like, you can always work hard at making it work, but there are a lot of easier connections or chemistry that can happen. And again, I always tell my students, life is too short to be afraid. If that horse, for whatever it's doing, like whatever it does, sometimes you feel like the horse is going to do more than it ever does, but that like petrifies you. And that's okay to say, this is not my horse, because again, when we're in a fearful state, we just can't learn and we can't grow and we're not having a good time. And so if you're not having fun, it's like the horse is probably not also having fun, because horses are also like so connected to our energy that if we're like uptight and like freaked out and just in a state of like we're so up, the horse is gonna just follow us there. They're like, oh, whoa, what should we be afraid of? Oh, she's nervous. That means there's a predator in the bushes, and so then that just like escalates the whole situation. And you need to find a horse that matches you and what you need. Like if you're super high intensity, maybe a more quieter horse would be better. Or if you have what we call an electric seat, a lazier horse might work for you. It's amazing sometimes to have horses in my stable and have different people get on them, and they're like completely different with different people. So that's always something to be aware of and pay attention to. But again, I want a horse that's rideable. That doesn't mean they're super easy, and that does not mean they have no energy. But I don't want a horse that is looking to come against me. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about throughness and a good mouth and all those things. But it's also like horses that I always feel are looking for an out, or they're opportunistic and you gotta like always like keep them on the straight and narrow. Like, that's not my favorite kind. And like every horse has their thing, right? Like one of my horses in my stable isn't very supple and bendable. I have another one who is extremely supple and needs and very energetic and needs like the turbo boost could lessen a little. Like we don't need both turbo engines. We could just like maybe cut one and take it down a couple notches. Sometimes we need to take the wind out of his sails because sometimes it's like hurricane gale force winds and we just need to just an easy breeze would be great, would be clearly enough. Some horses you always got to ask to give a little bit more. You got to decide. I remember one of my best friends when I was in Hungary, she was like, I ride best a horse I have to push a little bit. And I thought, I would not even categorize myself in any of those categories, but I thought that was interesting that she gets she's a fantastic professional Grand Prix international rider. Like she's amazing. And she was like, if it's too hot, I get intimidated and I don't like it. I don't like to always have to like hold it back. She goes, I like a horse. She had a lot of stallions at the time too. She's like, I like a horse I have to like push on a little bit more. So I thought that was interesting too, that she knew that about herself and she knew that was the best kind of partner for her. So again, rideability, rideability, rideability. Through the training I've received through Charles and so many wonderful trainers that I've had the wonderful opportunity to learn from, we can train them to do a lot of things. We can train them to do all the things, really. And so if you have a horse that's rideable, that makes the process so much easier than one that you're always having to convince to come to work or get serious or, stop messing around, or they're too lazy and they don't want, or they're just too crazy. Like they're just always hectic and thinking about what their friends are doing in the stable and they're just like, blah, and you're like, okay, we need to like bring it back here. So again, like that horse that looks to me, comes to me, wants to be my partner, wants to like join up, if you want to use one of those words. I look for that and I feel that right away from a horse. Body harmony is the next category, I would say. And it's funny because Ashley and I were talking about this on a couple of different horses that we have known in the past and one that we have at the moment. And Summer had wonderful body harmony, which, she could do trot or canter until further notice. Like her body just worked in a really easy, like going in a gait was very easy for her. And there was never this like driving or like holding. She just like, you asked for canter, she cantered until further notice. Everything was easy for her. Of course, Grand Prix is not easy. That's not easy for anybody. Rider, horse, breed, all the things. It's really hard. But, a horse that has this internal control of themselves, I think, my next category is connection and self-carriage. But I do think this like body harmony goes along with that. What I look for is how do they use their body when a rider's on and also sometimes without a rider on. A lot of times at the vet check or whatever, we just want to see them lunge and you just get a good sense of how does that horse carry itself? Does the back, it's one of those things of like the power and the engine is in the hind legs. And then the back is like the bridge to take that power up through eventually into the connection. But like, what does that horse's back do? What does the wither and the neck, like what's that natural? What do they want to do with that? And again, then like, what does their eye say about them? You know, and so I always look for this harmony that the body works together with itself. Of course, that goes also along with good conformation. I like to think about the horse in a balanced piece, looking at the slope of the shoulder and the slope of the hips. I always look at the loin to make sure that the horse isn't too wasp waisted, that in that lumbar thoracic junction, like the sacroiliac area, like how strong does that look, and does the horse use that part properly? Nowadays, and we'll get into this a little bit later too, but like nowadays there's this like legs are flinging and flying everywhere, and you're just like, whoa, it's the fanciest thing I've ever seen. But like, look at the details of what's actually happening through that connection point, because that lumbar sacral connection piece is what's going to be able to like lift that horse's forehand inside the collection. And of course, you know, the Grand Prix is all about collection, pirouettes, piaffe, passage, transitions. The zigzag is so hard, you know, like all that collection and sitting. You can teach a lot of horses to move in a bigger gait when they can collect and engage properly. So for me, again, when I look at that body harmony, I also want to look for that good conformation, especially through, you know, what that horse's top line does in general. And then if there's a little harmony that's not quite there, you know, the horse looks a little disconnected, or the neck is moving kind of different from the back, and maybe the hind legs are pushing too much, you know, is that then a product of, is that totally who they are? Or is that a little bit the training? Is it a little bit the circumstances? I do keep that a little bit in perspective as well, but be careful to buy the project. Not all problems can be fixed. So we want to start from the best possible place that we can. So if it's, you know, we'll get into contact too, but like if it's really heavy in the contact, don't think like, oh, well, with my riding, I will fix that. Like sometimes horses are just yucky in the hand, and no matter how good you train it, it will just always want to revert back to that. So we always want to start with what we're going to love, you know, the most. So again, this like swing in the body, this locomotion that really goes through the whole horse in a really harmonious, soft picture. Then, of course, we get to connection, which is like one of my favorite things. I mean, I am a broken record about self-carriage, which goes into a little bit also that whole idea of the body harmony, right? Like if this horse is like struggling in its body, where is it going to brace? It's going to brace right up into your connection and be like, ugh, you know, like the power of its hind legs just braces right up into the neck and just jacks up into your contact. That's a hard thing to fix. But when I talk about connection, I look for two things. Not only the physical connection that I want to feel in my hand, like how does this horse connect from the hind leg over the back, over the wither, through the jowl, through the pole, into the jaw, and what does it draw onto my ring finger and make this like beautiful round bascule? Like what's that connection? Really pay attention to that. But then again, going back to the first part of the rideability, can I create this connection from my spirit to that horse's spirit? Like, are we on the same, you know, like when you meet someone that you're like, I think we're going to be friends, or I want to go on a date with that person. There's like this connection. You're just like, I don't know. Like we just had this connection. That's also evident with horses. And you want to make sure that you feel that connection. And then again, that body harmony and what kind of physical connection does that make from your leg into your hand as well. Going back a little bit to the good conformation and the body harmony thing, I think it's also really important to note what the horse does in their joints when their hooves make contact with the ground. So we're now in the time of the super horse. The breeders have created these incredible animals that are like rubber-legged and just like bouncy balls. And it's amazing. You're looking at like knees and hocks, and it's just like, wow, like look at the knees and hocks, like just like flying around. But it's easy to get distracted by that of like, whoa, I can't stop staring at how off the ground that horse is. But you want to make sure that you're looking at the opposite legs to say, what does that horse's joints do when that hoof and the weight makes impact on the ground? When you hear a horse, like we had this one video that came in. It was such a beautiful horse. And we're like, wow, we really liked it. And then we somehow got the volume to like click on. And it was like thunder footing around the arena. And I was like, whew. My coffin joints just hurt hearing this horse like thud on his legs. And I thought, well, that is not sustainable soundness right there, because the lack of self-carriage and buoyancy and elasticity in the joints, like you could hear it. And it was a beautiful, big moving young horse. But I was like, that like bam, bam, like that lead front leg of the canter, we were like, no, that's way too like tight and strong and hitting the ground way too hard. So I think it's also interesting to note, what does the supportive leg do? Almost more important, like does the horse actually bend? Like if you think about a jumping horse and they have to like jump over the fence, that coiling of the horse's hind end joints, that's what you want to look at when they're trotting and cantering. So you want to think about like, what does the sacrum, does the sacrum roll? Does the hip stifle, hock, and fetlock? Like, does that like compress in a good way? Like, does the horse coil the springs? Or is it just like hitting the ground and then like, like bouncing off the ground with stiff joints? Because it's possible and you can do it, but if it has supple joints, that is where you also want to start. Another thing, I don't want the fetlocks to be like dropping down too far. Richard knows this when we look at sale videos. It's just like this amazing moving young horse, but it's like just like the hoof hits the ground and like, down through the cannon bone, and the fetlock just like drops down, and I'm like, nope, also not. Because again, that's a lot of strain and overly taxing just at a normal trot. It's going to do that later in life when it's passaging and things like that. Like, we will put stress on their legs to do this. We have to make sure we start from the most healthiest place. And those are things I also look at as well. So moving on to, again, the next favorite topic is, and I couldn't decide what word to use, so I started with throughness, which worked into permeable, which then, of course, I can't leave out the German word Durchlässigkeit, which then I looked that up, and I was like, okay, what does this definition like even say? And I loved it because it was like, you know, when a smell like permeates the room, or like heat permeates through the room, like it's just everywhere. It just goes through. It's in the air. That's the kind of thing. Not only with the driving of your leg do you need that to like come through the whole horse's body, but that half halt also needs to be able to make that horse a little shorter and elastic in its body, like a little rubber band, right? Like collected extension. And that's that like permeability and that throughness, you know, we're really looking for. So another words that came into the definition was transmissiveness, openness, flexibility, and responsiveness. So I like that too because so many people, there's like this giant epidemic of horses being behind my leg. And yet we're also like holding on to their faces so tight and tightening the nose bands and like hold the contact and kick him. You know, of course the horse is a little bit like blocked and doesn't know what to do and feels that just starts to get behind the leg because we're kind of blocking them in a weird way. And so for me, this going back to the body harmony too, there's this like power and then bring the power back and bigger and smaller and lower and higher and bend and straight and this elasticity through the horse listening to what I'm asking it to do, that there's this responsiveness of effort, like forward and back and smaller and lower and, you know, just that it's the horse is truly like at your fingertips and your whim. And that's not because you've scared it into doing that. It's because you've trained it, you know, through the vocabulary that we talk about in the academy, the daily vocabulary of long strides, short strides, long neck, short neck, and bending and straightness, that we're just working on it every day, but that the original product that the horse is in himself brings that ability a little bit easier than a horse that is just one neck and like one tempo and it's, you know, kind of stiff. Another word that came up was transparency. And I thought that is interesting because that for me goes along with the rideability and the good character of I want a horse that is also transparent. So like they don't have anything like up their sleeve, you know, or they're not gonna like all of a sudden do some weird crazy thing because there's like this buck under the saddle that just lives there. Like I want that to be transparent. Like I want to know what's in there and I want to be able to see it and feel it and know it. Like don't be hiding anything under the saddle. So that transparency was also, you know, when you go to Germany, they're always like, he's very clear in the head. And I love that because that's also this idea of, yeah, you can just see what's in there and you know what's in there. And I like that. I like to know. I do not like surprises. I'm okay to deal with stuff, but I don't want a surprise. And again, you know, the bridge, I do look at the top line. I always want the top line to be longer than the bottom line, right? So sometimes we see a horse that's short in the back, but then like long on the bottom line, and then it kind of tucks up towards the stifle. And that, again, we talk about that being like wasp waisted. And then that loin for me looks like a little bit of a weak connection point. So I want that top line to look really filled up. Moving on to the next subject. I want good bones. I want good feet and a solid conformation. So another thing we talk about, I want a nice strong back. For me, I'm a little bit open about short and long. I have trained all kinds. So again, as long as the loin is not weak, I don't mind a little bit longer back. Sometimes that has a bit more motion and movement to it. So I'm okay with that. A short back can be strong, but sometimes stiff. Think a little bit like a wrestler versus a ballerina. You know, it's longer lines versus like short, tight. But I don't have, I just don't want a weak back, is the big thing. But when I look at the horse's neck and head, I'm looking to see if I have any examples of it. I don't think so. I'll bring diagrams and pictures next time. Or if you join the academy, I'll probably do a lecture on this at some point too. But you want to be able to fit like 3 fingers through the horse's like neck and the end of the jowl. So that like throat latch and like the first bone and then his jowl, you want to be able to have some space in there, because sometimes you can see on some horses they're like pushing that piece out and then there's like a bulge, because like going on the bit for that horse actually is really like restrictive in their guttural pouches and through the connective piece there. So you don't want to be fighting with that forever either. So I like to look for a very like smooth neckline and jowl, and a very open throat latch as well. So feet. Okay, this is like a really difficult subject. And I'm sure I'll probably interview some farriers at some point, because why not? But again, no foot, no horse. We all know that. They're probably not going to match your 2 front feet. But you want to really have something you can live with. I like a good solid foot that looks balanced under the horse's weight. Yeah, and just like, you know, no weird bulges or quarter cracks, or, you know, that it's not just a bad farrier job. Like, you want to look for a foot that supports that horse's body. Moving on to a good mouth. This is important for me because I'm going to live with this horse all the time. I'm going to ride it all the time, be around it all the time. It's going to live with me probably forever. So I don't want something that's just like ick. You know, it's always dead-mouthed or like has a pull or a brace or a cross lock. That's no fun for me. I've certainly ridden that. I have certainly trained that. But for me to want to buy that with my own hard-earned money, no, I do not want to do that. I will train it. Because I have trained everything. But that's not my first choice. And I've got an old injury in my L5 in my back. So there are certain horses that start to pull in a certain way. It was like, oof. I don't have any in my barn now, but like looking for horses, we get on it and I'm like, no, this pulls right at my back and I cannot do this. We took a client to Germany and she had an old fracture in her neck. And so this horse wasn't particularly super strong, but the way it pulled into the rein, like she took one circle and she got off and she was like, no, it's like pulling right on my neck. Like I cannot, no, this is a no. And for the next rider, the horse was great and they didn't feel anything. They had no problem with it. But like for her and her injury, that just like poked the bear for sure. So for me, I have to be careful with my back. And so there's certain horses that pull in a certain way, or like certain canters that can aggravate that for me. So I always want to make sure that the horse has a good mouth. It can have kind of a tough neck, but I don't like a hard mouth, which of course moves us into tongues. I got a few interesting horses in the barn at the moment with old history with some tongue things. Knock on some wood, they are much better. But yeah, I mean that is a hard, you don't want to have too thick of a tongue. Some horses have too big of a tongue for their little mouth. Some of them have a short mouth, so I've learned a lot from Kim Gentry from Bits and Such about mouth conformation and what kind of bit We have so many different choices of bits, so I feel it's just important to know what you're getting into, know what you're buying. But again, tongue problems, it a lot of times just comes from lack of throughness. So I go back to then, what is that horse's self-carriage like, and throughness, because that tongue is like the last muscle of the top line. So if that's like pulled up and doing whatever, something else is also going on in the neck, which is probably also related to what's happening in the back. So again, that goes into connection for me as well. So then we move on. We were just talking about my L5 and my friend's neck. So now we need to talk about sittable gaits. Can I ride it? Not only do we want rideability in the first place, but it's also like, can I actually sit on it in a comfortable way? The size of the barrel matters. The length of your leg matters. The saddle position and how that energy goes up into the saddle, into your body. Some horses look totally smooth and are not comfortable at all. Some look like they are the biggest movers on the planet and they're super smooth. So it is important to be able to sit on that horse and feel, do I fit on this horse? How does the power generated from the hind legs transfer through the back into the contact for a connection? But how does that go into my body, as well? And there have been many horses that have just hit my body wrong. For the next rider, they were perfect. So that kind of confirmation does matter, and it's worth to get up there and feel that out. Some horses are very wide. Some horses look super wide and have a really good place for your leg to hang. So it's always about finding that out. Let's talk about the gaits for a second. Not only do I want to be able to sit it and not have it like pull on me in a negative way, but always, always, always buy a good walk. A good walk. It is the most important. Then it is related to the canter. Buy a good canter, because you can make an international trot. That's so much more trained in. We can train piaffe, we can teach a passage. There's all kinds of ways to teach them to do that. Spanish walk, you can do it all kinds of things to teach them how to make that happen. But always buy a good walk and always buy a good canter. And a trot you can sit, to be honest. Don't think that if you're not riding 8 horses a day and you get this great horse and it's a little bouncy for you, that you're going to learn how to sit that trot. That trot might be really difficult to sit, no matter if you were a professional rider or not. So make sure you buy gaits that you are going to enjoy and be able to ride in that way as well. So then, of course, I go into personality. Because, again, you're going to be with this horse, hopefully for a very long time. You should get along. I personally like a little sparkle and a lot of personality. I think I bring that out in my horses as well, because obviously I have a lot of personality too. And I feel like who I am is very also transparent, and it's like that's me, that's who I am, which draws out my horses, their own selves, as well. But I always look for a little sparkle in the eye, and that they're people orientated and engaged, that they want to know what you're doing, like what you're up to. Horses that aren't that way, I try to pull them out of themselves. That's also through the riding, to make them a little bit more confident of like, come on, girl, be loud and proud. You're beautiful. Like, get out there, you can definitely hear me saying that to some of my horses as well. So yeah, I like a horse I'm going to enjoy. I like horses that whinny to me, who come to the front of the stall when I walk in the barn. Like, everyone's happy to see me. They're engaged. They want to be ridden. They're happy in the cross ties. That's the kind of horses that make my whole day. And since I spend my whole day here, that's important. We get into a little bit injuries and surgeries. I am not totally against a colic surgery. Again, you always have to just like match your goals, where you are based in reality, what you want to accomplish, what is your timeline, and will that horse be able to hold up to that job? So again, I've had a couple horses in the stable that have had colic surgeries before I met them. They've, knock on wood, never had a colic problem, even though they had that situation happen. So yeah, it's just about get all the detail you can about things like that. Same with misbehavior, honestly. I've had a lot of different horses that have reared or really bad buckers. And they all did it a little bit for different reasons, and all turned out pretty good. So, and were successful in what they were doing. So for me, it's always about, again, I don't like surprises. I do not like surprises. So if that's up the sleeve, I need to know about it. But then it's a little bit interesting always to figure out why that horse is doing that. Is it insecurity? Is it dominance? Is it claustrophobia? Is there something wrong with its back? Does it just need to run in a big field more often with friends? You know, it's like there's ways to figure that out. So again, I'm not totally against misbehavior as long as it's not chronic, but I have not come to that it's a chronic, non-negotiable behavior that we can't improve. So yeah, so I guess, you know, it really comes down to what can I live with? What do I want to live with? You know, things that the seller tells you, hey, it needs a lot of turnout. Please listen to that. You want to have the horse be successful as it can be, and take the information from the owner, you know, to help that horse make that transition as easy and wonderful as possible, because all programs are different and you don't want to have to repeat and run into the same learning experience, you know, that maybe this owner has already gone through. So with that, all I have here is my isogenics container. But with that, let's have a toast to riding and finding the right partner for you. And I hope you guys found that helpful, and I will see you soon. All right, thanks for joining. Bye.